This was the world of Washington Irving, painted more than a century ago. Just north of New York City lies the Hudson River Valley that Irving roamed, wrote about, and immortalized. 100 years have chiseled little change upon the valley's face. The lore that Irving so imaginatively wove into his tales still cloaks the river as it did so long ago. A drowsy, dreamy repose seems to hang over the Hudson, water licking wistfully at the banks of the coves which indent her shores. Not far away in a peaceful little cemetery in the Sleepy Hollow he made famous, a weather-beaten tombstone marks the grave of Washington Irving. A windmill turns in the tranquil countryside, a reminder of the old Dutch settlers whose twilight superstitions, told and retold around the family hearth, were the inspiration for Irving's most captivating stories. In the heart of this rustic region, Washington Irving's home, Sunnyside, is preserved today as a literary shrine to America's first great author. Sunnyside, in Irving's own words, a little old-fashioned stone mansion, all made of gable ends, and as full of angles and corners as an old crooked hat. The house purchased by Irving in 1835 has been faithfully restored. An authentic glimpse into the life and times of Washington Irving lies behind the beckoning door. Along with the hundreds of books that line his study, Sunnyside contains more than 1,000 of Irving's own belongings, including the desk at which he worked and the pen with which he wrote. His portrait hangs in the parlor. Nearing 50, he was world famous for the legend of Sleepy Hollow, contained in the sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, Gentleman. This edition by Heritage Press is one of the many reprintings that have stirred imaginations through the years. A pleasing land of drowsy head it was, of dreams that wave before the half-shut eye, and gay castles in the clouds that pass, forever flushing round a summer sky. Now nestled in this pleasing land, there is to be found a little valley, or rather lap of land, among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the world, a sequestered glen long known by the name of Sleepy Hollow. In this by-place of nature there abode long ago a schoolmaster, Ichabod Crane by name. He was tall but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, and hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves. The object of Ichabod's romantic attentions was plump and pretty Katrina Van Tassel. It was, alas, a courtship destined to bring poor Ichabod in conflict with Katrina's suitor, the dashing Brom Bones, and one fateful night, the headless horseman of Sleepy Hollow, a huge, misshapen, black and towering specter clutching his own head in his hands. Ichabod spurred his steed forward, but the specter started full jump with him. Away then they dashed, through thick and thin, stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. The schoolmaster stretched his long, lank body over his horse's head in the eagerness of his flight, but the goblin remained hard on his haunches. Ichabod's terror rose to desperation. He heard the Hessian steed panting close behind him. Horror-struck, he even fancied he felt his hot breath. Perhaps you know what happened next. How the horseman hurled his head at Ichabod, how the horrible missile sent the schoolmaster tumbling into the dust, while the goblin passed by like a whirlwind. Today, a sign marks the site of the Headless Horseman Bridge that Irving immortalized in his legend of Sleepy Hollow. A concrete structure has replaced the original wooden span across the brook, on whose banks were found the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod, and close beside, a shattered pumpkin. Nearby, however, can be seen a replica of the bridge that the terrified schoolmaster clattered across in his ill-fated flight on that night long ago. Ichabod was to vanish forever from Sleepy Hollow. Brom Bones, who shortly after his rival's disappearance conducted Katrina to the altar, was to look exceedingly knowing whenever the story was related. Though only a legend, the story of the Headless Horseman seems somehow to be true, to endure as timeless and as changeless as the spell of Sleepy Hollow. Sunnyside will survive too, restored and preserved, filled with the memories and mementos of Washington Irving, enshrined with his legends, classics of America's literature.